The plasma rounds screamed overhead, turning the twilight sky of Vorshan 4 into a canvas of violet death. Arya Ven pressed herself against the collapsed foundation of what had once been a research station, her breathing ragged and sharp. Blood trickled from a gash above her left eye, mixing with the dust that coated her face like war paint. She should have been dead 3 times over by now. The Kethrani war machines had come without warning, their towering metallic frames striding across the plains like vengeful gods. The evacuation shuttles had left 40 minutes ago. She'd missed them while trying to download critical data from the xenobiology lab. By the time she'd emerged, the sky was already burning. That's when she'd found them. 7 Vorshan cubs, their luminescent fur dimmed by terror, huddled in the wreckage of their habitat dome. Their parents' magnificent apex predators that stood 8 feet tall were nowhere to be seen, likely vaporized in the initial bombardment. These cubs were barely weaned, perhaps 6 standard months old, their fangs still milk-white and their claws untested. Arya had made a choice in that moment that defied every survival instinct screaming in her brain. She couldn't leave them. Now, as another volley of plasma bolts carved molten furrows in the earth, she wondered if compassion and stupidity were the same thing. "Stay down!" she shouted, though the cubs couldn't understand her words. They understood her tone, though. They always had. Kiro, the smallest of the 7, pressed against her side. His copper and silver fur bristled with static electricity, a natural defense mechanism that served little purpose against weapons designed to atomize flesh and bone. But he didn't retreat. None of them did. The Kethrani drop pod landed 40 meters away with a sound like a thunderclap. Its hatches hissed open, disgorging 3 of their shock troops, insectoid monstrosities wrapped in exoskeletons of living metal. Their weapons were already primed, multiple eyes scanning for targets. Arya's hand went to her sidearm. 12 rounds left. She'd already spent 8 on a failed attempt to disable one of their scouts. These weren't scouts. The lead Kethrani spotted her almost immediately. Its mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or hunger with them. It was hard to tell the difference. It raised its plasma rifle. Kiro moved before Arya could even process the danger. The cub launched himself forward with a yowl that was far too fierce for something barely the size of a terrier. He positioned himself directly between Arya and the alien soldier, his small body trembling but refusing to yield even an inch of ground. His siblings followed instantly, forming a living barrier of fur and defiance. "No!" Arya screamed. "Get back! You can't!" The plasma bolt came, but it never reached her. The cub's fur erupted in a cascade of bioluminescent light, not the soft glow they emitted during play, but something else entirely, something primal. The air around them shimmered and bent, and the plasma bolt dissipated 3 feet from their formation, absorbed by some energy field Arya had never seen in 6 months of studying their species. The Kethrani soldier paused, its multiple eyes widening in what might have been confusion. Arya's scientific mind raced even as her heart hammered against her ribs. The cub's fur contained specialized cells that generated bioelectric fields. She'd documented that much. But this was orders of magnitude beyond anything in her research notes. This was a coordinated shield, powered by all 7 cubs acting in concert. The Kethrani didn't hesitate long. All 3 opened fire simultaneously. The cubs held their ground. Kiro stood at the front, his small paws planted in the ash-covered dirt. His eyes, those impossibly large, golden eyes, locked on the enemy. Behind him, his siblings maintained the formation, their combined bioelectric field creating a dome of shimmering energy that turned the air itself into armor. Plasma bolts splashed against the shield like water against stone. The cubs whimpered with each impact, their small bodies shaking from the strain. But they didn't break. They didn't run. Arya's vision blurred with tears. She hadn't realized she was crying. These creatures, these children were dying to protect her. "You should leave me," she whispered, knowing they couldn't understand. "Please, just go." Kiro turned his head slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. In that moment, Arya saw something that would haunt her forever. Comprehension. Intelligence. Choice. They knew exactly what they were doing. The shield flickered. The cubs were weakening, their luminescence dimming. One of the Kethrani soldiers was flanking left, preparing to strike from an angle. Arya made her own choice. She rose from cover and fired all 12 remaining rounds in rapid succession. Her aim was true. Years of mandatory combat training on frontier worlds paid dividends. The flanking soldier's optical array shattered, ichor spraying from the destroyed sensors. It staggered, momentarily blind. The momentary distraction was all they needed. From the north, the sound of human engines filled the air. A gunship battered, trailing smoke. But unmistakably, Alliance crested the ridge. Its forward cannons lit up the darkening sky. The Kethrani soldiers broke formation, retreating toward their drop pod as railgun fire tore through their position. One didn't make it. The other two barely did. The gunship settled into a hover beside Arya's position, its side door sliding open. A Marine in scorched armor leaned out, one arm extended. "We saw your beacon." "Move." "Civilian." Arya gathered Kiro in her arms, the exhausted cub going limp against her chest. His siblings collapsed around her feet, their shield finally failing. "I have 7 with me," she shouted over the roar of the engines. "They come too or I don't go." The Marines started to protest, then looked down at the cubs at their dimming fur, their small chests heaving with exhaustion, their eyes still watching the horizon for threats. He nodded once. It took 3 trips to get all 7 cubs aboard. Kiro refused to release his grip on Arya's flight suit. His small claws tangled in the fabric. As the gunship lifted off, Arya looked back at the scorched earth where they'd made their stand. "You saved my life," she whispered into Kiro's fur. "All of you." "Why?" Deep in her scientific soul, she knew the answer would take years to fully understand. But in her heart, in the place beyond data and analysis, she already knew. Because they had chosen to, just as she had chosen them. And that choice, made in the face of annihilation, had forged something unbreakable between human and Vortian. The galaxy would learn soon enough. Humanity didn't just protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Sometimes, they were protected in return, and those bonds, sealed in fire and defiance, were the strongest in the universe.